Imagination with the Healing Garden, and thank you so much for joining me. One of the things I'm going to cover is emotions have a few purposes. Yeah, this is what emotions are for. The first thing that they are for is literally the check engine light of your mental health. So when you get an emotion, you're actually getting an updated status on how your mental health is doing. And if you have primarily a lot of negative emotions, you are getting updates that you have a mentally negative or a chaotic, unhealthy, emotional mental environment inside your subconscious mind. The second purpose of emotions is they are literally the thing that we use to connect with other people. Emotions have four parts to them. When it's just you, there's two emotions. There is the emotion you give and the emotion you receive. But the minute you bring another person into it, you actually have four emotions, or you have four parts of the same emotion. A really great example of this is the giving emotion. So if you think of emotions as having a negative and positive energy, and they do, when you experience an emotion, they give out a positive or a negative, and they do. Which side and how you are interacting with the emotion tells you if it's a negative or a positive, and if it is a deposit or a withdrawal. Now, the deposit and withdrawal part of where you are making this deposit is the karma bank. Literally, the karma bank. Karma is made up 100% of emotional energy. And if you do something good, you are actually giving positive into the karma bank. If you do something bad, you are taking a negative deposit out of the karma bank, and you're using your emotions to do this. So when you have you with the emotion giving, and you are giving another gift to somebody else, the first emotional exchange is the positive exchange of giving and receiving. So it's one emotion, one action, but there's two ends to it. This person over here is giving, and this person is experiencing the same emotion with receiving. It's the same emotion. It's just whether or not you're on the receiving end of it or the giving end. All emotions are this way. You can give fear and you can receive fear. Now the other side of this is when it's natural. This is when it's smooth, it's flowing beautifully. This is the positive side of it. The negative side is either if you are giving and taking by force, and now that is what we refer to as robbing and stealing or raping. And that is literally the by force giving and taking without consent. So there's basically consensual and not consensual. That's really it. There is consensual giving and taking of emotions, the exchange of emotions, giving and receiving. And there's the non-consensual side. So the non-consensual side is when somebody robs a store. You are non-consensually receiving. And if you abuse somebody, if you are projecting, you are non-consensually giving unwanted emotions. But on the other side of it, with giving and receiving, where you make an offer and they accept your offer, now you're going to get a positive exchange back and forth. Now, if the majority of your emotional exchanges are negative, that's when you basically build up a negative karma bank, and or, depending upon which side of the receiving giving you're on, it's also going to build up your emotional mental environment switches to more negative. Now you can have a lot of things happen to you, and that could actually increase your deposit into the karma bank, and you can still have an emotional negative environment. When you become mindful of how emotions work, and you basically use boundaries to basically stop the negative flow, this is it right here. When you use boundaries to basically direct the negative and positive, the negative flow of the non-consensual give and take with internalization and projecting, that is when that stops. But you have to use boundaries to get the negative flow to stop. Now, the flip side of that, that's boundaries prevent the negative flow and back and forth. But the other side of that is when you Well, it's when you don't use boundaries. So as a result, you can have both sides going. And the other side of that is when you iron up, you stop accepting. This is really, really important because this is what is wrong with the human condition. So in this case of the giving and taking, you have the non-consensual side, and that's when we internalize or project. The flip side of that is the giving and the receiving. Now, to prevent, I'm going to say this again, to prevent the non-consensual side of the exchange, you need boundaries. The boundaries are going to stop the non-consensual side of the giving and the taking. Instead, we, as a different kind of defense, shut down and we stop receiving. There's no accepting. So what ends up happening is the people in our lives make offers, they give, and we're not connecting. The connection happens when you accept, and that's the real, that's it right there. When you accept. You can receive and you cannot accept. Somebody can give, but if you don't accept, you're not going to connect. So somebody puts something out there, that's called a bid for connection, rightly named. When someone makes a bid for a connection, you can ignore them, you can accept it, and you can accept it negatively or you can accept it positively. It is only with the acceptance that you actually make the connection. So if somebody reaches out to you, there's that bid, there's the giving, and the person doesn't receive it, there's not going to be a connection made. So this is a great example. I'm currently in a networking group on WhatsApp, and everyone is blasting out everything that they say. Everyone's posting. Almost no one is responding. Almost no one is interacting. Everyone is just blasting. So it's a room filled with givers. Now, the intent of giving is, it's mostly ill intent. It's to make money. They're not there looking to connect, and they're not there looking to, that says exactly, it's a networking group, but they're not networking, because networking you're supposed to engage and intersect, but that's not what's happening. What's happening is it's a sales pitch where everyone is blasting, buy my stuff, and there's absolutely no reception occurring. When there's no reception because no one's receiving, it's just falling down. So there's no connection. It's a networking group. You are supposed to be connecting and making connections and engaging. And so as a result, no one's doing the appropriate giving and the receiving. There's no one receiving. There's no one accepting. The only receiving and accepting going on is negative ones. That's where people are complaining or there's a problem. Everything else is just ignored. So as a result, there's no connection being made. This is the empty frustration feeling we get in a group whenever we go on a group in Facebook or we go onto any kind of event, and there's just blasting out and no one's engaging with it. It's very much consensual, where you have a giver who can make an offer and you have the option to accept and to pick it up. And if you don't, it's been declined. It's an actual way to decline, but now you haven't connected. Now most people, because of abuse and trauma, are afraid to accept. They're afraid to receive. Because by receiving or accepting, they've reached a point where they're too scared. They're too terrified. They don't want to get hurt. Now the flip side of that is those people wall up. They are absolutely ironclad. They are walled up. Most of them don't even know how to engage. They don't know how to connect. They feel awkward and uncomfortable if they receive a gift. I'm one of them. They feel awkward and uncomfortable if they are given any kind of a compliment, and it makes them feel uncomfortable. The uncomfortable feeling is your lack of practice with accepting. That's what it is. Because you lack accepting, because you lack the practice of accepting, it's not going to feel good. It's going to be, and the not feel good is actually called unfamiliarity. That's all it is. Comfort zones are built off of familiar. So what it is you're really dealing with now is an unknown. Discomfort is just the unknown. So when you have the pain spectrum, Everything is a spectrum. When you have the pain spectrum, you have the comfort zone, and then you have, well, you have the fear zone. And in between the fear zone and the comfort zone, you have the growth zone. This is where discomfort happens. Now, the comfort zone is supposed to be like a mother. It is supposed to be your ground zero where you fall back to feel good, brush your wounds, administer your first aid, store up on some food, stock, do some canning, rest, sleep, recharge, ground, and then go back and adventure in the growth zone. People don't do that. What ends up happening is they use the growth zone as armor, and this is where the whole thing falls apart. They shield up and then they withdraw. The comfort zone stops being the comfort zone at that point, and it becomes something completely different. What the comfort zone then becomes is basically an addiction to an avoidant. They've turned the comfort zone into the avoidance addiction. That's the problem. A lot of people are using their comfort zone to avoid growth. They're using their comfort zone to avoid conflict. They're using their comfort zone to avoid anything that they can't control. Now they're projecting their need to control onto the comfort zone. This is the most toxic form of living because you become a shut-in. You become a hermit. You stop growing. You stop reaching out. Look at that, you're getting lonelier. You're getting lonelier because you're not connecting. You're not going to connect unless you receive. You can't receive because you haven't been outside. You've been inside this hermit comfort zone for a while. So when you finally start to heal enough where you're ready to go out, first of all, you need skills to do this. Most people don't have the skills. So they go back to the growth zone without preparation, without being grounded, without being solid, but they're back in the growth zone. So it's not going to go well because they don't know what they're doing, they don't have the skills, and they're vulnerable. And they're not fully recharged in most cases because they don't know how to do that. So they go back into the growth zone. Sure enough, they get hurt, and then they remind themselves, oh, this is an example why I should never leave the growth zone. I never should have come back here, and they go back to the comfort zone. So when you go into the growth zone, let's assume this person is healthy. They've grounded themselves, they've recharged. Grounding and recharge is actually self-care. That is what you should be doing when you do self-care, grounding and recharge. After you restabilize, you ground, recharge, you rest up, you go back to the adventuring zone. That's what I like to call it because it's less scary. It's fun. And fun is required for this to work. If you don't have fun, it becomes dangerous and scary. Fun is the key emotion to make this enjoyable. You must have fun to do this. In order to have fun, you have to have an imagination and you have to play. But adults are told that we're not allowed to play. So adults go, oh, I don't want to do that because play has been taken away from adults. So you get your play, you get your imagination, you go back into the growth zone, you do your growth thing, you have an adventure. Instead of getting uncomfortable, you're now having an adventure. You have your adventure. You learn things. You define yourself. You figure out more about who you are. Now, the more you're here, the more this becomes unfamiliar. Now, the familiar comfort zone is expanding to include your adventuring zone. You've increased the tolerance. You've increased the familiarity. So now the unknown of growth, the unknown of the adventure zone is no longer assimilated. Just a minute. That's not the right word. Give me a minute. Is no longer associated with the unknown. Now you've learned to associate the unknown with adventure, fun, and enjoyment because it's no longer unfamiliar. You can have something that's unknown and familiar. You can become familiar with the unknown. When you become familiar with the unknown, it stops being scary and you start enjoying growth. It is the familiar versus the unfamiliar that we're actually afraid of. It is not the unknown. This is a lie. People think that we're afraid of the unknown. No, we are not. We do not have a fear of the unknown. We have a fear of the unfamiliar. We have a fear of discomfort. Because we have a fear of discomfort and unfamiliar, because we don't know how to manage them, we don't do anything with them. We avoid them. So most of us avoid what is unfamiliar and uncomfortable by hanging out in the comfort zone, which now has turned into our emotional prosthetic so we don't have to deal with the actual problem. And we have that little confusion in our head that's saying, I'm terrified of the unknown. I'm terrified of change. Change is unknown. Change is scary. No, you have a problem with what is unfamiliar, which is why if you are familiar with abuse and being poorly treated, that's going to make you feel good, because good feelings of good is associated with what's familiar, which is why you see a lot of people who are abused leave an abusive situation and then go back to it, because they value familiarity, not comfort, because believe me, that's not comfortable. Neither is that. They aren't comfortable no matter where they go. What they value is familiarity. At least they know what to do with that. At least they understand how to process that. So they stay in a bad situation that keeps getting worse because it's familiar. And they have the skills to manage it. Here, they don't have the skills to manage it. They do not have the resources, they think, to manage it. So they avoid it. These are the skills, people. These are the skills. So when you are ready to grow, when you are ready to change, what you require is basically the ability to ground yourself, the ability to recharge. Self-care has got to be the sloppiest word in our language. It's not. It's one of them. Sloppy words result in sloppy results. Sloppy word uses results in a lot of miscommunication, a lot of confusion. You need to love yourself. That's sloppy communication, because there's like 99% of the people out there all going, what does that even mean? Because it's sloppy. You need to accept yourself. That's the word. You need to accept yourself. Not love yourself. The right word is accept yourself. You cannot reject and hate who you are and then turn around and try and build a relationship while you are rejecting who you are. Because what's going to happen is you are going to end up mirroring the person you have, and or the person you choose is going to end up picking up, basically reinforcing the lesson that you hate yourself. So on purpose, you're going to find somebody, well, not on purpose, the subconscious mind does this on purpose. The subconscious mind is wired to then find you somebody who will guarantee to hate on you. That way, it reaffirms that you don't want to accept yourself. So either you'll end up with an emotional prosthetic, somebody who you wish you could be, and now you are using them in a codependent situation, or you are choosing someone who's highly abusive to remind you that you are not someone you should accept or love. So before you get into a relationship, you should learn how to accept yourself. Not love, accept. You can love yourself all you want and still reject you. This is about our relationship with the emotion acceptance. We really have an aversion to the emotion acceptance. Acceptance is the key to human connection. It is the key to resolving cognitive dissonance, which is a major emotion, and it is the emotion that dictates all of our pain. Acceptance is the solution to grief and depression. Acceptance is the core emotion that many of us do not know how to use. So once you start learning how to actually use acceptance properly, your cognitive dissonance goes away. Your depression significantly diminishes. Grief absolutely goes away because you're no longer rejecting, you're accepting. Your ability to exit the comfort zone finally goes away. So I'm going to be covering a lot more on acceptance. I'm going to be covering a lot of how to manage emotions and apply them to your life. How to, this is it. This is the juice right here, where it's basically a relationship between your emotions and your communications, which words you're using, the purpose of words, and understanding how to ground and recharge. Grounding comes from your community. Grounding comes from your relatives. You require a one cord. You require a grounding home, a base. The home is supposed to be absolutely solid in a relative that you trust. This is why we originally went back home for the holidays, because the holidays originally were used as a place where you could go back and reground yourself. You saw this a lot in the 1st century when a certain time of the year was around and they all had to go back to their home location to pay taxes. you always pay taxes to your homeland, not to your current land. This was once upon a time. This was the Roman concept in the Roman territories back in the 1st century. You had to go back to your homeland to pay taxes. So once a year, everyone returned home, and it was a massive family reunion. It was a massive coming together of everybody. So while you were there paying taxes to your homeland, you also reconnected with your roots, and you grounded yourself. And that act recharged you. Unfortunately, most of us come from a really, really bad parenting location, or a really, really toxic grounding point, relatives. As a result, we lost our grounding and we became mental nomads. And we had no ability to recharge because we had no safe place to fall back to where we were with relatives. We had none of that. We were literally stripped without one of our 3 primary identifiers. An identifier is 1/3 of your identity that defines who you are. We all have 3 identifiers inside of us. This is called the philosopher's compass. This is the work that Socrates began. The first identifier is the self, the second identifier is the relative, and the third identifier is your imagination. When you combine imagination with self, with relative, in that dead center you have a really solid, stable, your truth. Now you know who you are. But you require your 3 identifiers. Your 3 identifiers must be in top shape. They must be solid and well-defined and well-known. They must be nourished. If they are not, you've lost your identifiers, and now you've got some mental problems. You've got a lot of problems because you do not have the ability to ground yourself. Because most likely, the people who were supposed to be grounding you compromised you, abused you. So as a result, they were no longer grounding you. So you were dealing with severely abusive situations without anyone to actually ground you. That's the problem. Because you lost the grounding, you lost one of your main identifiers. Now you don't know who you are. Now, furthermore, the people who are supposed to ground you used prospective abuse on you, gave you societal expectations, and said, you can't be the self, you have to be someone else. So now they've compromised the second identifier. You want to know what's wrong with the world today? This is it. The 3 identifiers, 2 of them have turned on each other. The relative failed to provide grounding and then attacked the second identifier, the self, and said, you can't be who you are. Now that leaves you with your imagination. But we've got a world out there that says imagination is for children only. And it's not real. So now they've ripped apart the 3rd one. That strips it all down to no identifiers, and now your truth is no longer shaped around who you are in your identifiers. They also take that away from you. Societal expectations step in, and they change the truth to their own perspective. And that's when we start acting like a chameleon. We wear masks, we tell lies. And then by the time we're 20, we're doing what society says we need to be doing, and no one has any idea who they are anymore. So when you ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? I don't know. Well, what do you like doing? I don't know. Well, how's your family and friends? Uncomfortable situation. Okay, well, where are you going in life? I don't have any dreams. What do you like to do with yourself? I have no idea. This is somebody who has lost all 3 of their identifiers. Their philosopher's compass is absolutely inactive, destroyed, and doesn't exist anymore. As a result, you have somebody who has no idea who they are. Now enter the emotions that all tell you, hey, this is the situation, this is what's going on. And because the person has no idea how to use their emotions, because the identifiers, the relatives, failed to teach them how to use emotions, you're not understanding what to do with that information. So as a result, it's not happening. You get the emotions in, all of your alarm system is screaming at you, hey, there's an emergency, there's a problem, and our relatives also told us that those can't be allowed. So we also had our check engine lights taken away from us as well. So we took our check engine lights and we put them in a little closet. And then when anyone saw our check engine lights, we would be abused for having those out. Again, we were conditioned to reject another massive part, a massive skill that we required. So instead of learning how to manage our our check engine lights, we threw them away. Now, when you're 40 years old, you are an accumulation of a human being that has just broken down and there's just nothing left. To fix this, you need to restore your identifiers. You need yourself back. You need your relatives. You need a solid grounding relative point. And then you need your imagination and play returned to you. Then you will be able to have your truth redefined. Truth is your perspective. You'll have that redefined. Once your truth is restored to you, that's also your reality. You'll understand what your reality is. Your perspective will be restored, and you will understand where you are in the world. Now you can dream. Now you can function. Now you can manage. Now you can take the emotions in, and you can process them properly. But you have to completely reverse the effect. Hence, a need for a healing journey. But you need to make sure that when you have a healing journey, that you are covering all 10 points of the 6-part mental system. Most healing journeys, most healing that people do, cover 2 of the 6 parts. So there's a lot of people who's healing and they're not doing full, well-rounded healing. As a result, they're only repairing half of their philosopher's compass. They are only recovering half of the self and nothing else. Solution. My Triadic Healing takes care of all of that. It breaks it all down for you. So, I'll be going into acceptance later today and covering that more, and I have a lot going as far as basically Operation Imagination. This is the emotional classes, the communication classes we're going to be going over, and then play and imagination for adults. I'm going to be literally like on Facebook and just connecting with people today, talking to them and engaging with them and going, yeah, teaching adults how to play is a huge part of my life. So that's something I'm going to be focusing on also as well. And if you see this, comment, DM me. I don't know if my DMs are work because I get a lot of abuse from my DMs. So those might be deactivated. So comment and then we can connect. We can connect through the comments. So comment below and I will engage you, and then yes, absolutely. Now, this is me sending it out to you as a gift. It's up to you to receive. Once the reception is accepted, once you've accepted, then you can either, well, we're done, the exchange is done, or you can give back. It's absolutely up to you. But that is the karma exchange that's happening here. Like, that's it right there. And when you accept, receive, watch, now you've made a connection, which is why when you watch TV, you have an actor putting out their art, and then you have somebody who receives it. This is why an actor needs an audience. It's because they're giving and no one's receiving. So you require an audience to receive. It's pretty awesome. Which is why a comedian requires laughter. The comedian gives the humor or the joke, and it's the audience that gives back the laughter in reception. It's all about the karma bank of the giving and the receiving. If you love shit like this, like, subscribe, follow, comment below, let me know what part of the show resonated with you, and share if you know somebody who could use this information. And I have my Authenticity City. It includes my city directory. If you take a look at the link below for my Linktree account, that will show you the entire directory, and it shows you everything I am doing, including Operation Imagination. Thank you so much, and may the kindest of words always find you.